Hey there, it's Cindy Thomas, your career coach and strategist. The Insiders Career Club was recently rated in the top 20 job search podcasts by FeedSpot. Check out their website link. It'll be in the podcast notes. Now let's meet our special guest. Okay, our special guest today, his name is Bill Kasko, and he's the president and CEO of Frontline Source Group, a nationally recognized award-winning staffing and recruiting firm. He has been a valued contributor to the Beige Book Committee for the Dallas Federal Reserve, providing critical insights on employment trends and labor market conditions that inform national economic policy decisions. It's going to be a lively and interesting conversation. Please stay with us. Let's welcome him into the show. Bill, welcome to the Insiders Career Club podcast. How are you today?
Doing wonderful. Excited to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Well, the excitement goes both ways because I appreciate all the current information that you're going to bring to the podcast for listeners so that they can kind of hear how it sounds from a different perspective, but it's still employment, right? So let's start with this question. We know that the pandemic shifted the market drastically for employment and just the way that we work in general, and also brought in the Great Resignation. And so that revealed a deep dissatisfaction on the part of workers. And just because of probably the pandemic and a few other things, it shifted the power from the employers to the workers. But already the power has shifted back. Do you feel from talking to your clients that employers have learned anything from that Great Resignation?
That is a really very complex and excellent.
I know.
As you were going through it, I thought, okay, yeah, I can answer that. And then I went, okay, wait a second. And then I went, all right. And then we almost have to peel it back a little bit to really discuss this because it really is a great question when you look at it as a long tail, like 5-part question, right?
Mm.
And so first we need to really look at, let's just talk about COVID and the pandemic first, because, we go through COVID and we go through a time when, if you look back the 20 years before that, what we were experiencing was a pool of individuals that we used to call that. There were a pool of people out there looking for employment. It was always cast a net, bring in a wide variety of individuals. Well, over that, let's call it 20 years prior, not to age me too much, but just to give it as a perspective here, we started to watch that shrink. We started to watch the quote pool of people actually get smaller and smaller. What was coming on the market was changing. We also were going through, if you remember, which is hard for us all to remember anymore about back then. It's like we want to put it out of our minds, but we were going through the generation of the independent worker, the individual that was going through this new phase of the gig economy that was taking place. And so you had untraditional workforce already going on. Then you throw on top of that, you toss in that even at the worst part of COVID with unemployment, and let's say we got to 15% unemployment, we still had 85% working. And that's the really important part, is how resilient the workforce is, but it started to shrink. And so as it started to shrink, we also went through a period of time when we changed the way that we were working as a society, not just in our country, but the entire world. And took technology, we embraced technology to allow us to be able to work from home.
You continue to work, be productive.
Exactly. And so we were doing video calls. We were freaking out if we didn't have high-speed internet, and we were looking at, microphones and cameras, and we were adapting. Then you throw on top of that people that during that period who said, you know what, I'm out. I'm going to take early retirement. I'm not coming back. I'm out of here. And so they stepped out a little bit sooner. Then we had college kids graduating and incoming to the new workforce, they weren't going to the office and they were working from home, and they were never really introduced into that cultural feeling of getting out of college and going to their first job in a building.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So now you throw all of that into play. We are working through and figuring out how do we live through a pandemic? How are we going to survive? We're going to get there. Here we go. We start coming out and we watch this unbelievable spike in what took place, right? And so this spike takes place in hiring. And at the same time, look, for years we needed an adjustment in salaries. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, the fact that we had, take for Starbucks coffee for granted, whether you like it or not, but baristas were making a pretty good living and getting college paid for, and yet we still referred to the receptionist at a corporate office as the $10 an hour person. And just, you couldn't live before on $10 an hour, and coming out of that pandemic, we sure couldn't either. And so it started this whole change that took place, a high demand for positions for employers, and the pool of individuals, of that skilled worker, that individual who had been in that environment, corporate specifically, more than manufacturing, was saying, you corporate people have been making a ton of money, and I'm struggling. And by the way, my daycare and healthcare and costs have all gone up. This is what I want. And I'm getting about 20 phone calls a week from companies that are hiring, offering me 10 to 15% more. I'm going to take a look. I'm going to see what's going on. And so they started interviewing. And when they started interviewing, what was happening was that they weren't interviewing necessarily to leave where they were at. The Great Resignation, one of the facts that people don't talk a whole lot about, is that if I was going to rename it, it would have been the Great Interview, because they were interviewing for a raise.
Mm-hmm. Taking that information and bringing it back to their employer and negotiating.
Yeah, and they were taking that because we went through it. We would go through, our business went from life support to we don't have enough people to do what we need to do because the demand was so strong.
Mm-hmm.
And so on an average week, let's say we had 100 people interview with clients and we had 80 offers, we knew that we would probably only end up with 20 people truly accepting and starting those new positions.
Wow.
Because the other people would go back to their employer, they would give their 2-week notice, and when they did, the employer would say, what is it going to take for us to keep you? They would say, well, I'm getting a 20% increase in my pay. And the employer, 9 times out of 10, would say, we'll give you that. Okay, why would people think that employers would do that? Well, if they came to an agency like us and went to hire through a recruiting company, a headhunter, they're going to pay us a fee of about 25 to 30% of what that person's salary was. It was cheaper for them to pay them than it was to not only go and have to recruit, but then to have to train this individual, whatever they were doing, the skill, the cultural piece of the company. You can go on and on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So companies do this because they're already shorthanded. So we go through the Great Resignation, that when you look at it, the companies that said no, then the people were like, okay, I'm just going to go to that other company anyway. I'm getting a raise. Go over there. Now you go through a little period where this is happening and companies are like, you got to be kidding me. And companies went, during COVID especially, and their HR departments, they took them maybe from, a staff of 10 internal recruiters to 1, if they even kept that. And they said, wait a second, we got to ramp this back up. So they ramp up their internal staff now to figure out how they're going to combat against this. And then we go through this period, call it 18 months after 12 months, and an election in this country that usually will spur a little bit of a slowdown. You had a slowdown. And so companies then took a look and said, because you're right, there was this shift between who was in control, the employer or the candidate or the employee. And when the slowdown happened, the first people that the companies cut were the exact ones that all of us as agencies warned, here's what's going to happen. When the slowdown happens, and it will, these companies will remember what you just did. And guess what? You're going to be the first one out that door because you've put them in a terrible position.
Possibly, if they have a vindictive mindset. But I think during that time, Bill, that people overhired. I think they overprojected of what their needs were, and they overhired too. And so when the slowdown happened, they realized they had too many people and they had to balance it out. And I think that's also part of it.
In certain circumstances, it did. But I can tell you that our phone rang off the hook from people calling us back saying, you were right.
Ah, interesting.
And so in my 25 years in this exact industry doing this, during the Great Recession, Depression, whatever you want to call it, even, all the different times that we have warned people, this was the first time we actually had phone calls with people calling back and saying, you guys were right.
Interesting.
And we say, yeah. And by the way, we're not interested either. You lied to us. I mean, you've burned bridges. And that's what a lot happened. Now, companies did overhire. And part of the overhiring was that their employees internally were also extremely tired. They had been overworked. They'd been working a lot of extra hours. They didn't want to lose anyone. And they looked at it as if, look, we need to do this. It also depends on the company. Not all companies had that ability to overhire. The Amazons of the world and the Apples of the world, 100%, they were overhired. In fact, if you look at HR departments within like an Amazon, and they were on this massive hiring that they were doing, I see literally thousands of resumes every week still from people who at some point had worked at Amazon in an HR department recruiting, because that's exactly what they did. Now, certain skill sets, especially in the IT sector, that were so difficult to get, they did try to overhire, but they also understood that technology and what we were about to go through, we were right on the edge of this AI
big change
thing that was coming. And they also recognized that the talent pool for that skilled individual was becoming more and more difficult to find. And the only way to kind of take it was to overpay and to absorb. And then what you ended up happening was smaller to mid-sized companies couldn't afford to pay for those individuals because their salaries had jumped so high. And the adjustment that took place, call it over the last 12 months, it really, we're pretty much into 12 months of this. That adjustment allowed some of those salaries to come down, but it also changed that dynamic, as you said. And so today, what we're in is the employer is back in charge. The employer is trying. They're really, really trying to control their costs and expenses because they've been burned. They have been burned that they feel that pain. And it's not necessarily a conversation that they're going to have openly, but senior management, senior officials, CFOs, we have this conversation with them. They understand adjustments in the marketplace. It's a really unusual time, not really knowing what's coming with AI exactly, and not just one role with AI. And then how does it play out and look?
Yeah, because it's going to continue to morph this industry. It's going to continue to morph business because, as we were talking about earlier, it learns every day. It's learning every day. And, it's not necessarily new iterations that are coming. It's learning on a daily basis and getting smarter and smarter. And it's just going to have a immense effect.
What's really interesting about it, and again, aging here, I go back to the day that I remember our father bringing home the first microwave oven in our home. And all of us standing around watching this thing being, carried into the house with 3 people having to lift it because it was so heavy. And our father saying that in time, this change in this technology will eliminate being a cook or a chef in a restaurant. You won't have to have it anymore. And I look back and I think about that, and it's interesting because the technology did enhance, because we used to have a dial and a timer and it wasn't digital, and today it's a lot different. But we still, if you go to a Denny's or an IHOP, they now have maybe 6 to 8 microwaves, but they still have a cook. It's just the cook had to adjust and adapt to the technology change that took place in their field. That's very similar to AI today. And what we're going through, though, the difference is that, just like you were stating, that technology changes where we're used to seeing it every 18 months, 36 months change. It's 18 minutes to 36 minutes sometimes. It's almost, think about it, you can have it. And our destiny is going to be to really understand the human touch, how we embrace that, and where do we fit into the technology, because we wanted this. We wanted advancement. And so now, how do we live with it? And how do we make it better for us to live long term? And what does that look like in all different types of roles and positions? As I said, even a CFO conversation is AI is eliminating certain functions within accounting, but they still don't feel 100% about it and still need that human touch. And it's pretty close to everything else. But in time, certain levels and certain positions go away. I mean, I was a paper boy growing up. I delivered a newspaper in the mornings and the afternoons after school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the last time I saw, at the airport, maybe a newspaper, right?
Yeah, my dad used to read the paper every day. I mean, it's just, some of it's generational and just some of it is not. But yeah, my dad would sit down and he'd watch the news too, but he'd sit down and he'd read the paper every day. Well, I never got into that habit. I'd watch the news, right? So, it's different. And, and I think about the big changes. Well, there's been a lot of them because I've been working a long time. But I think about when the internet came, I was like, how do you use this? What do you do? And now you live on the internet. I mean, it's your life. I mean, you're communicating, you use your email, you use it to find Copilot.
Well, think about a resume. And a resume, it used to be mailed in. When I got into the business,
Oh yeah,
they
me
still were
too.
mailing them in, right?
Yeah,
And then
we have these
it
files.
changed. I can remember opening up envelopes and pulling out the resume, and you could tell it was from a smoker, right? There were different senses in the way that you looked at things. And then I remember it changing to the fax machine. And we would come in on a Monday and the fax machine had run all weekend long, and it was nonstop because we put the ads in the newspaper. And then when it went to the internet, and then now we more and more, it's on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I don't even
Yeah.
create them. And then they're AI created anyway.
It's amazing. Yeah. So we're talking about new trends. What new trends do you see emerging from innovative companies that, with regard to restructuring the employment relationship to adapt to new expectations? So I think I typed that wrong. What new trends are you seeing that are emerging from forward-thinking companies in regard to restructuring the employment relationship to adapt to new expectations?
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the position and exactly what they're doing. And so we have definitely seen a change in trying to embrace technology, but we've also, what's been interesting, and this has really probably been over the last 6 months of this year, have heard from more companies saying, we're just kind of hanging tight. We're not going to jump necessarily into this just yet. And so, which is interesting. I was kind of surprised this year to see, for example, from a customer service standpoint, which is normally, when you look at customer service roles on like a food chain in the hierarchy within environments, depending on the company and how they value customer service, which is a true fact. Sometimes they just don't put a lot of emphasis. But for ones that do, they were investing actually more in the human capital than they were in maybe the AI automation piece of it. But they were utilizing the AI automation piece to functionally make sure that that experience for their customer was better than what it had been in the past. So really evaluating their CRM systems to understand the process flow within their company and how is that going to look down the road for different roles and positions. And what's interesting is it didn't really matter about the type of company. So we had an oil and gas client that was doing that. We've had a lot of retail companies that usually are, I want to call them maybe even sometimes a generation behind when it comes to embracing technology. But really looking at the human capital side of it to understand what is this role and how does it play, even if we decide that we're going to go full in on AI. I've heard more horror stories about the companies this year who last year spent a lot of money and jumped in on some things. It didn't work right. And when they tried to get out, they were so embedded that they really couldn't get out. It's become a debacle for them to almost unwind it because it just wasn't ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of this. If you think about it, I also believe that we're going through, and especially right now, I bet now to the end of the year, we're going to see more of a change within AI, not so much about the way that businesses are using it to run their business, but the way that businesses are using it to assist them in their business, how they're gathering information, fact finding. I know there's a lot that's done from the marketing standpoint, but they're using it in a different manner to assist their employees to actually be more productive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Instead of just giving it to them, they're saying instead, hey, this is really advancing. And this isn't just a put a letter together thing. This is really doing some pretty cool research and analysis and presentations for clients. We can use this to make it more efficient for you in your day. And we've gone through that. I mean, we've gone through 3 years ago, we tested the first version of an AI recruiter. And she actually, and I say she, it made phone calls and actually did interviews. And it was horrible. It was terrible. But today we're on, Joy is her name, our 4th generation, and she's incredible. It sounds like a conversation like us. It's responsive. It's fantastic, but it doesn't do everything.
Okay. And how is Joy functioning? Is she functioning via email and text, or is it?
It's voice. I listened to a call the other day.
Ah.
So, part of this is going back to that customer service. How do we satisfy people? An individual applies to a position. The old thing was you go into a hole, nobody ever finds you. Our goal for 20 years has been to make that experience not like that. So one of the functions of this is that we're communicating in all these different ways to try to get people to respond back. Joy is one of those. So if someone applies to a position for us at 1 a.m, they're getting a text and an email from her saying, I'm available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I am an AI recruiter. If you would like to speak with me, click, I will call you right back. So they'll call and she will spend 20, 30 minutes on the phone answering questions, basically having a full-fledged conversation, speaking with that person and asking questions in a conversing way. I listened to a call the other day that a person asked a long tail. It was about 3 or 4 real questions in one sentence type of a statement. I wouldn't have been able to answer. I got to be honest, because I got confused halfway through listening.
Okay.
Joy answered that question perfect.
Ah.
And we all listened to it, and it scared us a little bit. But here's the thing. It's not a human touch. And even when she gathers the information, which is what she's supposed to do, and she allows the person to know, we hear you and we're recognizing you. You're not going into a hole. She tells them, now I'm going to make sure that the lead recruiter receives all of your information and goes to the next step, basically. And so it saves time for us because after COVID, from a recruiting standpoint and handling, trying to satisfy everybody the best we can, we had to be more efficient as well. And so it's eliminated multiple phone calls, dialing, trying to set up everything.
Missing people, yeah.
Yeah, it's made it convenient and it's made it a good experience, a great experience for that person who's looking to make a career change as well. So I'm embracing it. I'm not scared of it. I look at it as just another piece of it. And
Mhm.
I think that's what companies are doing more and more too as we go forward, because it's the shiny squirrel, the silver. You just can't have everything. It has to work for you.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Now, yeah, as a recruiter, you're like, I don't know about that. But
Our recruiters didn't like it. I'm not going to lie. They were scared.
I'm sure. But if you're using it as an adjunct, and you said that you listened to a call that they did. So how is the information coming? Is it recorded as an audio, or do you get it written, or and then how does that go into your system to record it?
Yeah. So our system and the way that I built it is that it writes back. It's recorded, first of all. So we have an audio recording. It writes back the data and transcribes it into text. And then it writes and fills in information within our CRM system
Oh,
so
great.
that it populates, updates, and really gives a better function when it goes to for us searching, even if that's not the best position for the person, but for us being able to catalog and search through our internal system, we have 1.9 million resumes of individuals over the last 21 years that we
Yeah,
have.
that's a lot.
That's a lot. And so for us to search and to data mine, this has actually helped us to really be able to narrow it down to make, again, that experience a much better one for individuals day in and day out. And that's our goal.
Mm, okay. All right. So with the adoption and growing use of AI, like you're using, the other employers are using it. They have systems that do, pretty much the same thing. Share about some of the current trends that you're seeing, and in your opinion, how can a job seeker, what can they do to stay viable for the next 5 years?
It was funny. I a conversation over the weekend with an individual who's in the IT sector, and he was very proud. And again, my caveat in this is that's fine, but he was extremely proud of the fact that he is not on LinkedIn. He is in technology, and he is on the cutting edge. And I was like, okay,
Yeah. Okay.
you're gonna have to help me out because I mean, are you learning from osmosis? I mean, how are you getting your information? Is it just from Reddit? I mean, what are you doing, right? And I think that's part of this is to understand that there's so many different outlets out there that it's a funnel that has been changing over time. And where is it in the funnel with your skill set that you need to live? And everyone is different depending on what it is. Now, over time, LinkedIn has been grow and honestly, I'm fascinated with LinkedIn and how it has come over the last 20 years to grow into just this platform that has so much information and allows I pray and hope they don't continue to push too much towards monetizing it, which they are, because it'll end up as something different. But networking, webinars, ongoing training, learning, reading is so important today to try to stay a little bit ahead. We again, we used to always think we're going to stay ahead of this curve. It's not a curve. I mean, this is staying ahead means you are reading something every day. Staying ahead means you're reading because we read in snippets, right? We read in 10, 15 seconds. We swipe. It's understanding where are you getting your information? What groups do you trust? And then really what at the end of the day, what still excites you that you want to be involved in? Because you had brought up, when the internet came out, and I can remember when it came out also, and I can remember trying to figure it out because we had just been on like a dial-up thing for many years, and more information through a dial-up, let's say, just figuring out email. And when ChatGPT and all of this came out, I remember the first few times using it, it was a little scary. And as this continues to evolve, if you're not learning and you're not looking at that sector or industry that you're involved in and trying to see what's going on with it, you're going to be left behind. And you won't be left behind because you didn't do anything for a year. You'll be left behind because you didn't do anything for a month. It's just changing so quick. I go back to the cell phone and I think about the big brick.
With
Yeah,
the
the big,
aerial.
big, yeah, huge antenna on the brick that's sat on the table. And then I look today at my iPhone and think, my gosh, how many of those bricks would it have taken today to make my one iPhone? And
Yeah.
then, as someone said, one time, it's like it could run NASA on one iPhone, what it used to do.
Well, to think that you have a computer in your hand, that you walk around with. I don't even have mine with me. So I was like, oh, I forgot to turn it off, but I must have left it in another room.
It's just trying to figure out what's for you. There's a whole generation, and our son's 29, and he does the Reddit. He's an engineer. And I have tried to understand Reddit, and I don't get it.
I don't spend time on it at all. I mean, I remember when it first started, I went there because I probably at that time I was doing technical recruiting, but that dropped off and I don't really go there anymore.
It was funny. We were at a family dinner about a year ago, and we were having a discussion, and I said, well, I was looking for something, and I just, went and Googled it. And my niece said, you do what? And I go, I Google it. And she's, I don't know, 26, 27. And she said, oh, that's funny. And I'm like, well, why is that funny? She goes, well, we don't Google. And I was like, whoa, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
She said, we TikTok. And I said, I'm sorry, you TikTok? She said, yeah, we look up everything on TikTok. That's how we get our information. And I'm like, you're going to have to explain this to me. And the next week, when I came back to the office and was talking to everybody, I said, we need to be on TikTok. We weren't on it. And I said, we need to be, apparently that's the next thing too. We got to be on. And so, it's always trying to figure out what are these generations doing? What is new? What's relevant? But when you're trying to learn and understand, where are you getting your information from and being plugged into something? You've got to, I just believe you need to be plugged into something to continuously read, to grow, and to allow your brain to advance.
Yeah, it's a continuous or lifelong learning now that it's one of the top skills that employers look for. I mean, you have to be putting something in there all the time. But I would also caution listeners to make sure that the sources that they use are good sources. They're getting the right information. And I mean, and that's true with AI. I mean, you have to vet it because it does still hallucinate. It's getting the information and yes, learning, but then also taking it a step further. And I was speaking to a gentleman that is a university professor. I'm going to do a show with him next week. And he was saying it changed everything about the way that he teaches. It's everywhere. And the students do use AI in the classroom, but then he had to figure out a way to still make sure that they're learning somehow and not just finding information. So it'll be an interesting conversation, but yeah, you don't think of it in those terms. You get classroom, teacher, student, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the way it used to be, but it's changed.
Well, and you hear the horror stories today also about the interviews that take place and the technology that allows the AI to listen on a video call, let's say similar to this, and transcribe and then give answers with the script on the screen so the person can just read through it. And, that's the unfortunate part, is that that's something that happened before. It's still going to happen. You still have to figure it out. It's just getting better and better. And it's the new mousetrap sometimes. And that goes back to trying to stay ahead of it as well.
Yeah. I don't think the being ahead of it is going to happen. I think if you can just keep up, you'll be doing good. If you can just stay current with what's happening, you'll be doing good. But trying to stay ahead, that's a whole nother world.
I agree. I agree with you 100% on that. Yeah.
What industries do you see growing? Because I looked at your website and you recruit for a lot of different industries: IT, healthcare, accounting and finance, administrative. I know I've left some out. There are like several others. So what are you seeing now with what hiring is happening in which of those industries are hiring is what I want to ask.
Yeah. And that's like a moving target, right? And it's funny because there is demand across the board. We're not in the light industrial, warehouse, or manufacturing kind of areas, which, or even logistics, have all been through a lot of change just because of the dynamic shifts and the changes within the economy. The bottom line of all of it, though, is that the skilled individual is still in demand. The question is, the companies that are hiring, are they hiring because they're looking for what level? They're usually looking for an individual that's bringing something to the table. And so you can drill that down into all different areas. Healthcare is still an area that
Will
continues
always be. Yeah.
Yeah. But what's really interesting, so we have a sector that does dental and dentists in particular. And what's been very interesting is that we're in this area and time frame right now after COVID, where you had a lot of individuals who got out of college who went and didn't go on necessarily to the next level of education, but instead said, you know what, I'm going to get into the workforce right now. And this is what I'm going to do. And so we're seeing areas of that advanced degree that is needed specifically in healthcare in particular for higher level type of roles, positions, surgeons, specialty items.
Oh, yeah.
That the individuals didn't necessarily go on, but jumped right into just being a general dentist. Now, there was already a shortage. So it's not that I'm saying, oh, we got a glut, because we don't. But that's an example. The IT side is also interesting, because as we're looking at this advanced technology, it's happening so quick that where are these people coming from? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a really interesting part also, because going back to your comment about the internet, when we went through the internet revolution, which that technically was, and the IT revolution, we had schools teaching HTML coding, JavaScript, all of the PHP, all these different things that were going on. We don't have that as much today. Do they still teach some of that? Yes. Do they do? Yes. But also AI is doing a lot of it themselves.
Yeah, the coding.
The question kind of comes into play. Who's teaching who? And then where is there a lack of this and that? And so it's even accounting, finance, you would think, well, with AI, isn't that eliminating some roles? Well, some, but not all. And so it's not just one area, not that we're seeing. We are seeing these positions that they can do without. The receptionist of a role, because of phone system automation, and which is great, honestly. AI driving that phone system when you have people that work remote. But a lot of the drive also is that right now we're in a push for companies to bring people back into the office.
Yeah.
And so we have a very large corporation in New York in the media business has recalled all of their employees back to New York City, and they've been all over the country by like September 1st, or if they don't come back, they're released. And, that's typical, because they moved to other states. They've been gone for 4 years. And so you see all of a sudden the demand to fill those roles and those positions if they don't come back. Now, I have an opinion that's a hot sports opinion on that in the next 10 years, we'll see the shift go back again.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see the shift change. We have a housing shortage, not only in this country, but in this world. And as technology continues to increase, these large buildings will turn and be transformed more into housing. And we'll see a change take place. But right now, as long as a company has to pay rent, their justification is to call them back, which does create another need. Also, the last 6 months, it's been tough because tariffs, holding back, not sure if we have a recession, high interest rates. Now today, if you look at numbers and really follow the numbers, the weekly unemployment claims down again. This is not 1 week. It's week after week. It's continuing growth. It's slow and steady growth. But what we're not seeing is that ramp. And we're also seeing slow movement of people taking a change from one to the next. So we're not seeing as much of that because everybody's cautious. I did listen to someone this morning that talked about it, saying here we go. Second quarter, third quarter this year are going to be much busier because we're now getting through these trade agreements. People are feeling better. Companies feel better. Manufacturing's feeling better. Here we go. If interest rates maybe come down a little bit, maybe that'll help. But I don't think we're going to see crazy growth, but I do think there's opportunity out there for people if they need and if they're looking. But they have to be resilient. They have to be resilient too, Cindy. And I'm going to tell you, unfortunately, if they want to find something, they can find something.
Yeah.
That's a big issue too right now, is that, look, if I had to go work at McDonald's flipping burgers to pay for my family to have food, I'm going to do that. Yeah. Now, McDonald's isn't going to hire me. That's all there is to it. Right. But that's what I'm going to do. And unfortunately, people today, a lot don't have that mindset. And the ones that do, God bless them, but companies won't take a look at them because they're afraid they're going to leave 6 months when the market changes.
Yeah, that's part of it.
It is.
And I mean, it's some of it's reasonable on their part, but if you have a position that's open and you need someone and this is the person, this person is here, hire them. Yeah, you may have to hire somebody else in 6 or 8 months, but in the meantime, they're being productive for you for that amount of time. And, it may look different. And when you have to,
part of that is the mindset of the employer, which did change during COVID, because I can't tell you over the years how many times I heard, well, look at their tenure. They were only at the company for 10 years. And today, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we actually put this on our website. We update it all the time. It's anywhere between 1.6 and 1.8 years on your average tenure. That's it. And so if I actually see a person who's been at the same company for 30 years, does that necessarily mean you're great?
Well, if they've been in the same position, yeah.
That's what I mean. They haven't. I would actually hire someone who's worked at 5 different companies in the past 5 years, who has the skill set and experience and exposure to different environments than the person who's been at one company and only been doing one thing for 5 years, because I'm going to add value. That person's going to add value to my company and bring me a different perspective and maybe ideas that I haven't heard about yet.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, yeah,
and
it's like
that change that's coming. And I've been amazed that recently we're hearing it more and more, but it's coming and we got to get there still.
It's interesting that you say that. I guess the companies that I've worked for have been very progressive, because the last 13 years that I worked for somebody else, I worked in biotech or pharmaceutical companies. And it's like, can they do the job? Do they have the experience? And those particular positions, you have some experience with it. That you've got to have the education. I mean, entry level and for a lot of those positions, because they're scientists, it's a PhD. I mean, that's not what you consider entry level, right? When you're thinking about it. But no, they would look at everything. They'd look at the education. They'd look at what they did. They'd look at what they produced as far as papers and contributed to other drugs that were being developed. They'd look at a lot of different things and look at what they brought to the table. And then we would, as recruiters, we would help counsel them and show them other benefits they may not have been thinking of. I consider that to have been a very progressive way to hire, from that whole, if they're not in the position for 15 years, if they haven't stayed in the same company for 15 years, that just means it doesn't feel like they were they weren't taking care of their career. They were just kind of sitting back on automatic, and you want somebody that is actually, they're not changing jobs every 6 months or a year, but they've stayed long enough to gain a certain level of expertise in what they were doing. And if they move to another area, another company, or even another job in the same company, they're learning something new. And I attribute the mindset here, because I'm in California, that's got a lot to do with the technology influence here, because it spilled over into other areas. And I think that's pretty much the way most people think about it. Most employers think about it here.
And it has to do a lot with the leadership also. Obviously, if your directive comes from your CEO, don't hire anybody like that. I don't want anybody like that. You don't have much of a choice, right? And so it really has to do with that leadership understanding that you have to have that variety, and you have to have that differentiator within your groups, which when you look at that, definitely open up the door for so many different opportunities for people as well.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about skill sets, because a couple of years ago, new skill sets or qualities or whatever you want to call them, there was a shift in what employees were looking for. So what are you seeing that employers want that's not just the actual experience, but it's the intangibles like soft skills that employers are looking for?
The one thing that I would recommend to everybody listening or anybody out there looking for a career change is focus on it. Hopefully you have at least one, if not two or three success stories in your last positions. How did you make a difference, not only to the group, but to the company at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Because that's really a focal point that they do want to hear. They want to know, what did you do different? It's no different than a company trying to sell their service or product. What makes you different than everybody else? That's something that they look at more and more. And the example can be not only the company, the client, the customer, but what did you do different? All of us aren't necessarily blessed to be able to have the ability to go to college and take time off and then work. Some had to go to night school, work weekends and do that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are traits and things that we don't talk about enough unless it's brought up. Paying your way through school and working at the same time and raising a family.
That's amazing.
I mean, to me, you're going to the head of the line,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You're a single parent raising a child, going to school, working a job. You're way above that whole list. It's about telling your story also. So bringing all that together, and you can do that in the right way that it doesn't sound like you're pitching something. But when you're able to explain, well, I went to school while I was working here at the same time and was raising my family. You're not violating any EEOC things by discussing that. It shouldn't in any way discriminate either that you have a family, so it's not going to do that. It should point out that you're dedicated and a hard worker. And I think that we are so afraid to talk about things like that anymore that we need to talk about it more. One of the questions I ask people when I interview them is that I ask them to tell me about growing up and their parents. What do they do? Talk to me about that. And it's interesting because I grew up in a family of 4 kids who parents got divorced when I in high school, and I was the oldest of 4. So raised by a single mom after that, basically walked out. So I understand. I understand from a different side. I don't understand a lot of stories I hear. It hurts me. I'm blessed to have a wife of 31 years and 2 grown kids, and I've done it different. But when I do ask that question and listen to them, it's interesting because they will open up about things, and it tells me a lot, because that's that opportunity for them to talk about the struggle, how they survived, what they had to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that person that I may not have had looking on paper, because sometimes it just doesn't tell the whole story, allows just to have that conversation to better understand them, how they've been through that. They don't show up late and leave early. They're dedicated, what they had to do. And to me, I'll give that person a shot any day of the week over the Ivy League individual who hasn't worked a day, but yeah, they got the great education, but they've never been to the school of hard knocks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually look at both, because sometimes, people bring different things to the table. But I would say to listeners, when you are interviewing, you have to help your interviewer. You have to tell them what Yeah, I went to school at night while I was working and raising a family, and I think that shows my ability to it's stick-to-itiveness, it's my determination, it's my persist I mean, you have to express that, and it's not bragging. It's telling them, but it's also telling them that you know what
You're
you bring to
dedicated.
the table. Yeah, it's
You
what
you
your
you made
contribution
a
will be.
yeah, you made a commitment to something, and this is what I did.
Mhm.
And you should be proud of it, by the way. And it's an opportunity for them to peel it back just a little bit and not, we're stuck under so many, we don't want to violate anything, right?
Yeah,
And it
nobody
makes
wants
it
to get
difficult.
sued.
Yeah. I mean, but it allows a little bit of a peek inside. And when you have that ability to not only tell maybe a little bit of that, but then to really express that dedication or give that story, that win, and stick to the positive. And even if you have to tell a loss of something, turn it into a positive. Turn it into how you took that and you learn from it and you're better because of it.
Mhm. What you gain from it and how you use that to go on or whatever to grow because we all have to grow, right?
That's right. And we're not perfect, by the way. I tell her that I'm the biggest screw up of all, but you learn from it. And that's what makes you a better person at the end of the day.
Right. Tell us a little bit about Frontline Source Group and also would you share why you got into staffing?
It was so Frontline Source Group, we've been around for 21 years now. We really started out as a temporary staffing agency. 21 years ago, it was more of the temporary side of stuff. It was going to be consulting. I had worked for Robert Half International, so a Fortune 500 company. So placing bodies a lot of the time. And the idea that I had was that I wanted, and I focused just on IT, and I wanted to really get into a specific niche and place SAP, ERP systems, consultants. It was so nichey, right? And 21 years later, we've never placed an SAP ERP system person. And so I got into the business to place people one at a time and to treat people with respect and to do it different, to do it the opposite way of everyone else, and to have this philosophy that we don't have to be like everybody else. We could be an agency that we started with someone, we placed them, we built a relationship, we watched them grow, and they came back to us year after year or years later, and we helped them and we grew it differently. And so over the 21 years, we've evolved and gone from 90% temporary and 10% the direct hire business and really just doing accounting, finance, IT, administrative, HR, legal, to now having like 20 different sectors within specialty niche areas. And really our business is more 90% direct hire and really the contract business is maybe 10%, maybe even less. But that's because it changed. And as we evolved, we changed. We changed as a company. We changed the way we did things, but we haven't lost our main philosophy, which was we call it the cheer. It started off as here, HERE, which was honesty, ethics, respect, and an entrepreneurial spirit. And we added cheer. One of our vice presidents who had passed away, he passed away about 5 years ago now, been with us for 10 years, said, why don't we have communication? It should be cheer. And all of us went, yeah, you're right. To make sure that and that's an example like with the AI tool and having that communication to give people respect. Changing a job and a career, it's an emotional event. When you're really it affects not just yourself, but it affects people around you. It affects your spouse, your loved one, your significant other, your family, your kid, whatever it may be. But it's not something that we don't take it lightly, and most people don't either. And so we built that respect in, and we built the ability to have those clients and build relationships. And I'm proud that, our people, when they do leave, they come back. We just recently had a client who said, hey, you placed this person with us 10 years ago, and she's retiring this year. We need to replace her. I mean, that's what we want. We've only placed one person with their company in that whole time. And that's okay because it's the relationship. It's coming back to us. We did a good job. Continue to, and you try to learn and do the best you can for people at the end of the day.
All right. All right. And you have a special guarantee. You want to share a little bit about that?
We do. We have a 5-year placement warranty that's just unheard of in the industry. And I love telling the story because it was our daughter's idea when we were buying her first used car. And the person said, this comes with a 5-year warranty. And she looked at me and said, oh, that's like what you guys do, Dad. And I said, absolutely not. And then we thought about it. And actually, we wrote a chapter in a book that was published during COVID, that the way we came up with it and the idea behind it. But we do. It's very unique and unusual. And it's really about the fact that over 98% of the people we place with our clients over the last 21 years, they get promoted. And so it was really built around the fact that we're going to do a warranty. So when they get promoted, we're going to replace them at a discounted amount. And our clients, they love it. They've embraced it. And we're pretty proud of it as well. But a unique idea that came together because a group of leaders and my daughter said, do it different. Don't be like everybody else.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I know we are right there. So I want to thank you, Bill, for coming to the show today, share all your wealth of knowledge of your industry around employment. And I know that it's going to be helpful to listeners. So
thank you. I appreciate it. I hope it helps someone. And, feel free, follow us on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn if you want and say you heard me on here and we can help you out. We would absolutely love to at least point you in the right direction.
Yeah. And you are a nationwide staffing company.
We are. And in fact, we have something that just came out. I really can't talk about it just yet, but what's happening for us with a new client is literally putting us in almost every single city in this country overnight and opening up a lot of opportunity that we're pretty excited about. It's been about a 5-year journey for us to land this client and build this partnership with them. And so we're very, very excited about it and expect to have a lot of opportunities to help people out all over the country.
Wonderful. Well, I hope you share that with me because I will update your notes on the podcast and put that in there too. So, and then share your website with the listeners before we.
Yeah, it's really difficult. It's just the name of our company. So frontlinesourcegroup.com. Yeah, you can Google it, YouTube it, look it on anywhere you want. You will find us. But like I said, the best thing we recommend, follow our LinkedIn page. Feel free to connect with me. Get your updated information. We make it simple and easy. We want that experience to be a great one for you. And keep in touch.
All right. Wonderful, Bill. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Did you enjoy the show? Well, keep listening. And don't forget to like us. If you've been laid off or downsized or need a career pivot, if you need resume help or to sharpen your interview skills, I can help you. Set up a complimentary 20-minute call with me on my website at www.insiderscareerclub.com. Until next time, may God bless you, keep you, and make his face to shine upon you. Take care.